Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving straight into the mysteries of the absolute most extreme environment on our planet. We're talking about the coldest, driest, and windiest continent on Earth, Antarctica. Down at the very bottom of the globe lies this incredibly mysterious world of endless ice, powerful storms, and some seriously unbelievable stories of survival. I mean, it is an environment so harsh and so completely detached from the rest of civilization that humans were honestly never meant to survive there. And yet, it remains one of the last deeply wild places we have left.
For centuries, this mysterious southern land was literally just a dream drawn onto ancient maps. Explorers basically just assumed there had to be a giant southern landmass to balance out the top of the Earth, but nobody actually knew what was out there until a few incredibly brave sailors ventured into those dangerous frozen seas. So today, we're going to unpack what actually exists at the bottom of our planet. What kind of secrets are hidden beneath up to 4 kilometers of solid ice? To truly wrap our heads around this frozen desert, we first have to grasp its brutal extremes. And let's start with the big one. Antarctica holds the record for the absolute coldest temperature ever recorded on Earth, a staggering minus 89 degrees Celsius. It's a level of cold that is almost impossible for most of us to even comprehend. At that temperature, exposed skin freezes in just a matter of seconds. And get this, even solid steel can become dangerously brittle and just snap right in half. But wait, it's not just the temperature that pushes the limits of nature. Add to that deep freeze the fact that during the winter, parts of the continent sit in complete, pitch-black darkness for months on end. Then, factor in the terrifying blizzards, which are driven by winds that can easily exceed 300 kilometers per hour. Just to put that into perspective, that is faster than the takeoff speed of a commercial airliner. And beneath those terrifying winds lies a massive, sprawling glacier. The sheer volume of this ice is just mind-boggling, with some ice sheets measuring an astonishing 4-kilometer thick. Imagine stacking the tallest skyscrapers in the world on top of each other, over and over again, just to finally reach the surface. The immense weight of that much ice pressing down actually warps the Earth's bedrock below it. So how is this massive landmass actually structured?
Section 1. The most extreme continent.
While, as you might guess, it is a landscape of almost total freeze. Nearly 98% of the entire continent is covered in a thick, unyielding sheet of ice. There's almost no exposed rock or soil to be found anywhere. It is quite literally a continent dominated entirely by a single frozen element, creating this awe-inspiring, almost alien world right here on Earth.
Geographically speaking, the continent is divided into 2 main regions, East Antarctica and West Antarctica. And across these regions, the massive glaciers don't just sit still. They act more like slow-moving rivers of solid ice, relentlessly carving their way toward the sea, where they eventually break apart into giant icebergs. Some of these icebergs break right off from gigantic floating sheets, like the famous Ross Ice Shelf. And get this, that ice shelf alone is larger than many entire countries. So given all of that, how did humanity ever manage to reach such a deadly, isolated, and unpredictable environment?
Section 2. Race to the South Pole.
The high-stakes progression of exploration really kicked off in the early 19th century when sailors finally sighted the icy coastline. They faced harsh weather, giant icebergs, and freezing temperatures that made every single mile incredibly dangerous. But the true race culminated in 1911 in a highly dramatic and tragic clash of strategies. Roald Amundsen became the first person to reach the South Pole using a super successful dog sled strategy. The legendary Robert Falcon Scott reached the pole shortly afterward, but his freezing march ended in tragedy when his entire team died on the brutal return journey. Yet, despite this deadly history for humans, this frozen landscape is far from a barren wasteland.
Section 3. Surviving the deep freeze.
The most famous residents down there are, of course, the penguins, particularly the emperor penguin and the Adelie penguin. They've developed these completely remarkable biological and social adaptations to endure conditions that would instantly freeze a human. To survive the brutal winter storms, they huddle tightly together, sharing their body heat. But here's the clever part. They don't just stand still. They are in constant rotation, slowly shuffling through the huddle so that no single penguin is left exposed on the freezing outer edge for too long. But how on earth do they find food in such a desolate place? Well, it all starts out in the icy waters of the Southern Ocean with massive swarms of tiny, shrimp-like creatures called krill. These tiny organisms are absolutely the lifeblood of the deep freeze. They directly support the seals, the massive whales, the tough penguins, and essentially the entire Antarctic wildlife ecosystem. Everything is fueled all the way up the food chain by krill.
It really is the ultimate paradox of Antarctica. The largest apex predators on Earth rely entirely on the smallest, most fragile foundation to survive. Without these tiny little shrimp-like creatures, the magnificent wildlife of this massive continent would essentially collapse. Every huge whale and resilient penguin depends entirely on this tiny foundation just to keep going. But life here isn't just about biological survival anymore. It's actually become an incredible hub for human discovery.
Section 4. A global science lab.
Now, you might be wondering who exactly owns this massive landmass. Well, the answer is nobody. Because no single country officially owns the continent, nations actually cooperate under the 1959 Antarctic Treaty System. It's this brilliant international agreement that ensures the land is completely protected and used purely for peaceful scientific research. It's a true global commons dedicated entirely to learning. Thanks to this treaty, at places like McMurdo Station, which is the largest research base on the continent, scientists from all over the world live and work year-round. Despite the brutal conditions, they're out there studying an incredibly diverse range of fields: climate change, marine biology, complex weather patterns. They even study space-like environments. In fact, NASA actually sends researchers down there to train for future missions to Mars just because the pure isolation and extreme conditions mirror outer space so perfectly.
And one of the absolutely most fascinating things these researchers do is drill deep, deep into the ice. By extracting these massive long ice cores, scientists are literally looking back in time. They pull up tiny, ancient air bubbles that have been trapped in the ice for millennia. These bubbles act like a perfect time capsule, unlocking physical secrets about Earth's climate history stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, all hidden right there within those 4 kilometers of frozen water. And today, those same ancient records are pointing us toward a stark new reality. Section 5. The climate change start.
Historically, Antarctica has acted like a giant mirror for our planet. Its massive expanse of bright white ice reflects incoming sunlight right back into space, which helps keep our entire planet beautifully cool. But as global temperatures rise and that ice begins to melt and disappear, we're losing that crucial mirror. Instead, the dark, exposed ocean absorbs more of that heat, which sadly only accelerates global warming even further.
And the stakes here are absolutely monumental. Scientists are observing that some Antarctic ice shelves are melting at highly alarming rates. If this continued warming caused all Antarctic ice to melt entirely, global sea levels would rise dramatically, causing severe, catastrophic flooding worldwide. Literally, the ice melting thousands of miles away completely dictates the future coastlines of the very cities you and I might live in today. Furthermore, this warming doesn't just affect human cities. It directly threatens those fragile marine ecosystems right there in the Southern Ocean. Rising ocean temperatures threaten the very foundation of the food chain we just discussed. It's a remarkably fragile loop, right? If the water gets too warm for the krill, the ecosystem doesn't just adapt, it starves. The penguins, the seals, the whales, they would all face devastating, irreversible consequences. There is a striking irony happening today as well. Despite all these environmental threats, human tourism is actually booming. Special expedition ships are carrying thousands of visitors to see the glaciers, the icebergs, and the penguins up close. People are flocking to see the ice before it melts, which requires extremely strict environmental rules to ensure these curious visitors don't accidentally destroy the very fragile balance they traveled so incredibly far to admire. Humanity's future and the future of this massive, 5th largest continent are deeply and permanently tied together. The survival of this entire ecosystem depends entirely on how well we continue to cooperate globally. We absolutely must enact and deeply respect environmental protections for this fragile, frozen frontier. Our actions around the rest of the world truly dictate the ultimate fate of this ice. I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today. Listen to this sentiment. Antarctica reminds us that even in the harshest conditions, life survives, science advances, and nature remains breathtakingly powerful. Hidden beneath those kilometers of ice are the profound secrets of Earth's past. If the ice of Antarctica holds the memory of our planet's distant history, what exactly is it trying to warn us about our future?